Let's move on to aiming for beginners now. And if I can make one simple request, it's please just forget everything that you think you know already about aiming. Aiming is still the topic that I get asked about the most, and it is unbelievable the amount of strange and downright wrong information that people communicate back to me. It seems to be a subject that is completely overcomplicated, and it should really be simple. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to aim in some very simple steps. Okay, let's reverse engineer the process. To pop this ball in that pocket, all we need to do is make contact with a specific point on that object ball. If we stand in a straight line with the pocket and the object ball, then the contact point is the part of the object ball that is closest to us. So it's that part right there. And that never really changes. If you've heard of cut and juice throw or side and juice throw, then just forget about them just now. They're not relevant to where we are at in our journey. So forget I even mentioned it. So to pot a ball, we need to connect two dots. The first is on the object ball. We've already recognized it as there, and that never changes. So if you're here, we need to make contact with that point. If we're here, we still need to make contact with that point. So it doesn't change. The variable is the cue ball. So what part of the cue ball needs to connect with that point of the object ball? And that does change. So if you're playing from here, then it's this part of the cue ball. If you're playing from here, then it's this part. So we need to work that out. The position of the balls is going to be different every time you come to the table. So I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be easy to work out the contact point on the cue ball when you first start playing this game, but I will help make it easier. Again, I'm going to ask you to forget everything that you think that you know. I've seen videos and heard advice where people say that you should aim the middle of the cue ball at the outside edge of the object ball, or you should aim at the gap between the object ball and the table. But how can that advice be good? Because if your cue ball is here, it's a completely different aiming point to if it's here. And again, if it's round here, then it is completely different again. So that is not advice that you can follow on a consistent basis. To get good at aiming, you need to learn your core angles and recognize them when they come up. For example, this shot here and this shot here might look completely different, but they're both what would be classed as a half ball cut. And all that means is that when the cue ball contacts the object ball, it's covering maybe about half of it. You also get a full ball contact where it would hit it straight on and make contact with the full ball. You get a quarter ball cut, so maybe from about here you would cover a quarter of the object ball, and then you get 3/4 cuts as well. So if you're playing from about here, you're covering about 3/4 of the object ball. It's important to point out that that's just a guide though. So for example, here, that looks about a half ball cut to play it into there, but that also looks about a half ball cut. But obviously I've just moved the cue ball, so you would aim slightly differently on those two shots. However, this is a good little routine to get you familiar with those angles, and I call it round the clock. So what we want to do is place the object ball on the black spot, and imagine we've got a clock face all the way around about it. Now we want to pot that object ball from every position on the clock. So we'll start at 1 o'clock, and what we want to do is pot it in that pocket there. Now when we do that, we move on to 2 o'clock, so that's maybe about there. So pot it again. And then we move on to 3 o'clock. So 3 o'clock, we've got a slightly trickier cut, that's maybe about a quarter ball cut, and we're trying to pot it in there. So once you've done those first three, you're obviously moving around to 4 o'clock. I now want you to pot it in this middle pocket, the same for 5 and 6 o'clock, you're aiming in there. 7, 8 and 9, you want to pot it in this pocket, and then 10, 11 and 12, we're aiming for it in there. Now, what this will do is it gets you familiar with those angles, but it's also teaching you left and right cuts. So give it a try and record your score. See how many you get first time out of 12, and keep practicing that. If you get 4, then aim to beat it the next time until you're getting 12 quite consistently. But for now, let's move on to basic positional play.